Hey guys, so I'm just making another little skinning tutorial showing only my method of skinning. Uh, and I find it to be pretty foolproof. And yeah, without further ado. So basically, you've already generated your skeleton. You already have your controls. You've already gone through all your controls and moved them by doing this, going into control vertex mode, and move them into the proper spot so you can animate them easily and see where they are. So that's already done on your guys' end, hopefully. If it's not, then do that now. Before going further with this video, you can always go back in after you skin the character and move these around, but I just find it cleaner to set everything up first and have a skinning be the last step. So, what you need to do is select your joint hierarchy. So you'll see that all the joints in here are children of this root joint. The only difference is that you guys might have, so I'm going to turn off my SH layer, that means single hierarchy, and I'm going to turn on joints layer. You guys have a setup more akin to this, and it has, because it's doing some kind of more interesting stuff behind the scenes, that gives you more posability. But what you'll have to do is select the hips, each spine node up to this one. And then you'll have to select this hand individually and this hand. And then you'll have to select the neck. I'm just doing shift selections for this, guys. And the head right there. And you'll see all the other joints have been selected. If my because my face rig and stuff is on the other layer, on this SH layer, along with the hair, that would also select. And then when you would click your mesh and do skin bind skin, and then you'd make sure it says binds to joint hierarchy. That way it goes through each of these hierarchies, looks at the nodes in that hierarchy. It's like, is this a joint? Is this not? And then if it is a joint, then it skins to it. Because you can add things that are non-joints to the influences track, but I find that I mean, you don't want to do that. You only want to bind to joints. So I'm going to turn off that joints layer. I'm going to turn on my single hierarchy again, and I'm going to do a classic save as. You guys need to be saving as, because if you don't, then shit's going to go wild. Thankfully, since this is all single hierarchy, I can just click that base joint right there, and then shift click my mesh, skin bind skin. I said do geodesic voxel for you guys because sometimes I can get good results, but you'll see that it doesn't work for me very well. So I'm binding this skin to that character, and once you do that, you're doing a whole different ball game. So it is bound and it is movable. But it's like, you know, like look, the heels shouldn't raise like that when I lower it because these controls didn't change the heels, so I need to actually go in and do some skinning, you know. So I'll show you my basic process for that. Hey, I actually did a better job now that I have joints in here on the face. But how's the skinning on these look? Not great. Not great. That's barely even controlling the lips. So basically, it sucks, but you have to do pretty much all the skin weights yourself again. So I'm going to select the object, and I'm going to right-click Paint Skin Weights tool. I'm going to make sure everything is deselected in here. I'm going to click that root joint, and I'm just going to flood all of my values. Turn your opacity onto 1, turn your value onto 1. We're going to flood straight to that root joint, and you'll see the entire character is flooded to that. So this joint is 100% controlling all of these verts. Everything you see is white, that's 100% controlled. You can use color ramp and stuff, but I'm gonna stick to. I'm gonna. You can use it without color ramp, but I'm gonna stick to color ramp, and you'll see during the smoothing process that it's a lot easier that way. So you'll notice my tenants basically, or the guidelines are. I'm gonna make this a reference layer so I can't select those joints. Let's see if that worked. Yeah, perfect. So the workflow that I do is basically flood and then smooth. Or select flood and smooth. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to select these. That one didn't work. Right there. Boom. Bang. And I'm just left clicking, shift double left clicking. Or shift left clicking and shift double left clicking to just get those rings. And you'll see I have that selected now. Now if I right click, go back to my paint skin weights tool. I'm going to immediately lock everything down. So now we can't change these weights. And if I go into object mode, you'll see that these don't control anything because they're not bound. The only thing that's bound is this. So we need to start flooding to different spots. So I'm going to go back into vertex mode. It remembers my selection from earlier. So if I go back into paint skin weights, everything's locked, but we need to find L. We're looking for the left hip control. So I'm just going to keep going through this hierarchy. Let's see, there's R hip, left hip. There we go. So we unlock this, right? Because we need to add weight to it from this grandma root, which has all of the current weight. So now we have that selected, and we can just do a nice flood. So now hip has all of that weight, and it has everything from there down to where all the ankles should be too. You know, like because we flooded the entire knee, the foot, and the ball foot region, so we can lock down root now, you see, because it doesn't have any of those weights, so we don't care about it anymore. We're just going to set up the rest of the weights for our leg. So knee's going to bend right here. So everything after this span, I want selected on there. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to unlock it so I can steal some weight away from that hip. And the reason you might be like, Mike, why the hell are you doing it like this? Like, I find this way to be the easiest though, because then you know exactly where your weights are 100% before you start smoothing, because smoothing moves your weights around in a very fluid manner, and it's kind of hard to predict, especially if it's your first time doing this. So it's a little bit of the caveman method, but honestly, if you tried to just do the geodesic voxel binding and try to compensate for that in the rest of your skinning, you're going to find it's kind of hellish. Because you can be like, I don't even know where corner mouth one's weights are, and it could be like affecting weird parts of your mesh. Like, it's kind of hellish. So I recommend 100% doing it this way. And then I'm going to go further down, and now I'm going to only select the ankle verts, and yeah, everything around here sounds good. Where do we go? Where do we go here? Right there, perfect. Okay, I'm gonna stay with this. I'm wondering if I want this to move with it, is the only thing. And might as well. Actually, I can always just add influence to that later. So I'm gonna deselect that. Go back, hold right click, paint skin weights tool. You can always find that skin weights tool by going up to skin and then paint skin weights. But I find holding right click over it and doing paint is immensely more efficient. Like, it's just so much faster to do it that way. So I'm flooding that now. and then going into here, and I'm selecting the ball of the foot, going to paint mode, locking down that ankle. Oh wait, no, because I need to steal weight from that to give to the ball. Still, I'm flooding that, so you see now how our skin weights are kind of working. So now that we have a functioning leg, now that we have a functioning leg, we can kind of go in and we can start doing some actual skinning on this. So if I put this into a pose like that, I can just go back into paint skin weights, and now is when you use the smooth tool. So it's just flood and then smooth. It's 2 steps for every joint. Pretty simple. Or I guess 3 steps because you have to select and then flood and then smooth. But so I have this. I have only these 2 values unlocked. If you're not sure if you have everything else unlocked, just be sure you can always select this button that selects everything besides what you have selected, and then you can just lock everything down from there. And then yeah, so now with one of these selected, you can just go in and smooth. You'll notice that that's when my color gradient starts popping up. And I find that the smooth tool works a lot better if you're smoothing onto like a 0 value rather than smoothing from a white. Because sometimes smoothing the white, I've gotten some weird bending. So like you see how that pops kind of. It looks like it's not popping into the right place, and that's because I don't think it is. So let's go into here. And yeah, you see how this is much more kind of what I'm expecting, because I was expecting it to average out. And for some reason, if you smooth on joints that have joints around it locked like this, and you're smoothing from the white, sometimes it messes up like that. So this is a little bit of a workaround for that. And that might not make much sense right now, looking at the video, but like once you go in and start understanding what the smooth does, like you see how it's making this kind of all these points averaged out, you'll understand when you're like, okay, I need to average this point out, and then it's just giving you some weird results. But that just takes time to get used to. So I'm gonna keep smoothing these. Get some of this in here now too. Right there. Perfect. Perfect. Yeah, you see how far those ones move to the side, like even though it was only putting them in the red. But then now if I smooth that way, it goes the exact opposite way of the one when I was smoothing on this with the ball selected. That's just the kind of glitch that I'm talking about. No, I'm not going to do that. So now, if I go back in here, then I remove all the values on toe up and down. And then if I left click on that box and then middle click drag in the viewport, you can see that now I'm getting better deformation in there. Because before it was just a stark contrast. And then now I'm going to do the same with this foot. So if I rotate it this way, you see that it's not deforming very well. In case grandma has to hit this type of pose in her foot, even though it's kind of past where a normal human can raise only that joint, you know. If you look at your foot, you can it only goes so high up. Like you can only go a little bit past 90 degrees. So this is basically an unrealistic pose, but if we can get this pose to work, then every pose before it would be a lot easier to hit too. So you'll notice that I can't even see those verts like deep in this crevice to even paint. So what I like to do So I like to go on my timeline down here, and I'm just going to set a key with S around 10. And I'm going to go back to 1. I'm going to reduce this down to 0. So now you'll notice that there's a key there. If you press S again, and you can kind of just drag between these, and you can paint in that type of mode as well. So I'm going to also make a key for the foot being very far back. This one is pretty important because you can, in fact, point your ankle down pretty far. So I'm going to set a key there at 19. And if you notice that I'm not pressing any button to make those keys, it's because I have auto keys on. And I'll go deeper into that when we're doing animation. So I'm going to go back to my paint skin weights tool. And we already finished the weight between these two joints. So now we need to fix the weight between these two joints, right here. Oops, right here. Knee and ankle. So I'm going to only unlock those joints and have everything else locked. And I'm going to start smoothing again. So since we've already done the selecting and flooding, we can go straight to our smooth step. I'm going to go to the ankle. I'm going to start smoothing some weights out over here. There we go. And I'm going to borrow even from a little bit from this area too. Right there. Perfect. Perfect. Oops, got a little bit too much of that front right there. You see how painted onto that front. You got to be careful where that brush is going. So let's kind of go across. Yeah. So you see how these verts aren't crumpling nearly as much. We still do need to help out these back ones a little bit. So I'm just going to smooth those. You'll see them kind of adjust their position because it's already, the joints are already posed so far away there. I'm going to add a little bit to these. And let's see. Right there. I'll get just a little bit of this. Just a little bit of this back foot, that way it doesn't poke out as much. And yeah, it's looking a lot better. So that's pretty much it for skinning. It's just, well, the last step is make sure you delete all these keys, because if you start animating, then after you've skinned your mesh, then you'd see that there's like keys on these controls, and you don't want that because you'll be setting your own keys for your own animation. So I would go back into Paint Skin Weights tool, go down to that hip, and I would do the knee next. The knee to hip, but real quick before I head off here, you'll see that there's times where you have, like, you didn't flood any weight onto something at all and you need to skin it. So if I raise this control up, I'm going to set a key again at the bottom, and then I'm going to go to frame 10, and then I'm going to set another key. So now you'll see that it's raising up, but you'll see that this skirt would need some weight on it as well, but we've done nothing for it. All the weight is completely still on that base root joint. So what we need to do is unlock that and think, what is going to be pulling on that. It's going to be the hip, right? Because the hip raises up. So we need to add some weight to this hip. So what we can do is get it like a little bit, get a pose that's like a little bit between these, because this is too extreme and this is not enough. So you'll see I can just go in here. Instead of doing smooth, you can just go add. Remember, don't do replace or scale. Just do add. Add's nice and simple. And I'm going to turn down the opacity a lot. So now it doesn't add a whole lot when you go through here. But you'll see I'm just dragging over these points. Same with these. And I'll do this row as well. Perfect. And right here. Oops. I'm going to get both those to be the same. Perfect. So now you'll see that that skirt starts to move with it. Of course, it's going to need a lot more weight, right? Because this whole thing's moving a lot. So I'm going to add a good amount of weight to that. Whoops, added too much. I'm going to add this. Right there. And then I'm going to kind of smooth this out a little bit. You can resize your brush as well. So I want to get a nice gradient going between these. And go back into add. I'm going to turn down the opacity. There we go. Boom, bang. Unfortunately, I need to add a lot of these interior weights as well. So yeah, you just basically keep painting these weights until you get some good deformation. Unfortunately, skirts that have like stuff, like layers underneath them, pretty annoying. Definitely annoying to do. You'll see belts can be pretty annoying too. But you see how this is deforming closer to what we'd expect from this. You can also go in and instead of doing the weights on this, you can go with the weights. Well, first of all, I need this knee to be a bit more smooth. So I'm going to lock that down. I'm going to start smoothing these out. Sorry, this part's going a little bit longer than I expected it to. I'm going to increase that opacity. Right there. I'm going to go back to this other side, and I'm going to smooth these as well. There. just doing some smoothing on these flooded and filled layers, and it'll just make this knee bend a lot better. You'll see now that, yeah, they're a lot more evenly spread. But like I was saying before, you can go into here. I'm going to unlock some of those hip values. I mean, some of those root values. And since this goes so high up and it doesn't need to, you can select some of that root. If you have a skirt set up like this, you can go in there, and with add and a very low opacity, you can just kind of add some of that weight onto that root. So these won't go as far when they're pulling out into that pose. And that can sometimes alleviate some of the bad deformation that's in there. So, like, remember, this pose would have been completely through the skirt by now, but you'll see now that it's not as bad. But yeah, so that's basically just my my workflow for skinning this type of stuff. You can see I would just keep doing that, selecting each of these joints and then flooding and then smoothing between them all the way out until you get to the tips of the fingers. And same with the face. You would flood it all onto that head joint, then you would flood like only, let me get out of this, only like these verts to this joint, these verts to this joint, these verts to this joint, and smooth between them. It's the best way to know for sure that you aren't like moving weights to where they don't belong, and it's pretty foolproof. And as always, remember to delete your keys after you're done. You can always just shift left click, drag on the timeline, delete. Make sure these values are zeroed out. And I'm going to save scene as before I quit out here, just because you should always be saving as. Alright, thanks guys.